I have a whole PowerPoint thing. So, okay. Before we get on to this, let me explain some things. I'm a preacher's kid. I've grown up in church all my life. I have known, my dad still preaches to this day. He is one of the associates at Marbley, but I have known nothing different from that, okay? We've always gone to church, even on vacation. My dad would drag us to a church somewhere. So we were always in church. Nothing wrong with that. How many of y'all grew up in church, just out of curiosity? Okay, that's a good majority. If you didn't, that's no problem. Sometimes that can be a good thing and bad thing, just depending on where you're at. I have one sister, and I had a cousin who lived with us for a while too. So I was around girls quite a bit. But me and my sister still go to church to this day. We had our moments, but anyway, I am very dyslexic, okay? Me and my son both, we have the same markers. It's quite crazy, and I'll circle back around to that again at some point. But the reason I say that, I'm very visual. I'm a visual thinker, okay? I see things in pictures and images, so that's what y'all are going to get today. Y'all are going to get pictures and images today, and I'm going to walk you through some of this. This is a church I grew up in when I was very young. I was probably 5 or 6, okay? And I got down real low. I'm also a photographer. I paint, sketch, whole 9 yards. This is, I got down and took a picture of this, probably about the height I was at the time, trying to kind of give you an angle of what I saw. I like I say, grew up in church all my life. One of the things I heard all the time was, don't run in church in God's house. There you go. So as a kid, 5, 6-year-old kid, I'm trying to put God together in my head, at God's house, so he lives there. Right? Because you live in your house, so I'm thinking that's where God lives. I'm also very interactive, so I'm going to ask some questions. I'm going to expect responses back. Now, the youth have heard some of this before, so act like it's new. But I just want to, this is what I saw as a kid. This is what I'm putting together. God lives there. Those big ceiling, all the way at the back is a baptistry. And to me, as a kid, that looked like a big door. And, of course, it had because God was big, right? So that's where he lived, right back there. I also had a mom that read us Bible stories constantly, okay? So I was by the time I was 8, I could take you through the Old Testament pretty good. Had a lot of Old Testament Bible stories. So I knew just enough at that time that looked like the Holy of Holies in the tabernacle to me. You can laugh. But I'm trying to put all this together as a kid. So I just assumed God was back there somewhere, right? And maybe we had an Ark of the Covenant. I didn't know. I'm just a kid trying to put all this together. And, never thinking that all the different churches that you see around East Texas, there's, does he live in all those? How does that work? But I'm just putting all this together. But these are my first steps, I guess, of God revealing himself to me. Now, I want you to think about how God started to form in your mind. I don't know if you can remember back that far. I don't know. Or maybe it was real soon, real recent. I don't know. But how did you begin to start to think about God? Because I look at my son. He's fixing to be 11. And I watch him and I can see his little, wheels turning. And I'm thinking, how does he see all this? Because it's a different world to some degree. Hold on. I have notes and stuff too. I need to see. Okay. Flip to the next slide. Okay. Now, out of the 3 images up there, which one do you remember seeing the most? I see a 3 back there. Anybody else? 3? Who all's with a 3? Yeah. Wow. Anybody with 2? 2? Anybody with Jesus and the Lamb, number 1? No ones? 1? Oh, well, 1. Okay. 3 is the oldest. I think it was back in the 40s when that was created. Thanks. That is... No, I wasn't trying to say. I've seen that one. That's the one I've seen. I grew up with that. It was just the Jesus I saw all the time, And, of course, I saw it being in Sunday school as a kid. I would see, different versions of, animated Jesus, but that's the one I remember that hanging up in the church somewhere, probably in a Sunday school room. I wish I could tell you all the stuff I've done in church. But anyway, one time I rode my bicycle through the church. But anyway, that's a whole other story, But yeah, well, nobody found out. But anyway, anyway. But number 3 was the Jesus I remember growing up with. And trying to put Jesus, and we'll circle around to this again, trying to put Jesus and God together and understanding how the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, that was just a crazy thing for me. I was trying to bring all this together. But anyway, we'll get to that in a second. Switch to the next slide, number 3. Okay. When I was in my 20s, I got a hold of a book by Philip Yancey. I don't know if anybody of y'all read Philip Yancey it's called The Jesus I Never Knew. So some of this is from that book, and I just ran with it, okay? But Philip has always been an interesting guy to listen to, and I used to listen to him all the time. And then you ever listen to somebody on the radio, and then you finally see them, and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, that's not what I thought that was going to be like, right? But yeah, I enjoyed reading this book. And it wasn't the first book I probably ever got, but it's the first book I kind of sit there and went, yeah, I never thought of it like that. He just made some really good points in that book. And I want to kind of go through some of that. Flip to the next slide. This is the scripture I'm going to go. Okay. Matthew 16, verse 13 is where I'm going to come from. Now, Jesus came into the district of Caesarea Philippi. He asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" And they said, "Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, and still others, Jeremiah or one of the prophets." And he said to them, "But who do you say that I am?" So that's the question I'm going to throw to you guys. And I know the Sunday school answers. I can give them probably just as easy as some of y'all can. But who do you say Jesus is? Wow, you can barely see that. Who do you say Jesus is? Who is it that you've grown up with? Flip to the next one. This is a first century image, probably one of the oldest of Jesus. Can you spot him? And it's not meant to be a flattering image. This is an image of somebody making fun of him. Christ on the cross. He has a donkey head. It's really interesting. I'm very image driven, so y'all got to run with me on this, okay? Flip to the next one. This is a 3rd century. Go to the next one. There you go. This is a 3rd century Good Shepherd. Some of the earlier images of Jesus, where he heals the paralytic man. Another 3rd century. One of the weird things, none of them, he doesn't have a beard. It's not what I would have expected. Okay, hold on. I got a lot of pages to go through, so. Go to the next. Yeah, here we go. This is a stained glass window image. I don't know where it's from. I've seen a dozen of these throughout my life. I think a lot of people see Jesus this way sometimes. He looks good from a distance, but don't touch me. You keep him afar. He looks great, stained glass window kind of thing. It looks good, but he keeps you at afar, keeps you at a distance. You don't want to get close to him. You can't touch him. Flip to the next one. Jesus in the media. I don't know how many Jesus movies I've seen all my life, but one of the first ones I remember seeing was in King James English. That's what they spoke through the whole thing. And as a kid, that's what I thought Jesus spoke, King James English, right? And my father immediately corrected me on that and explained to me that's not the way it worked. And I was like, oh, okay. But it was that learning experience. Let's see what's all in there. Passion of the Christ. Wait, go back. Oh, wait, you're going too far. There we go. No, you're right. Jesus Christ Superstar. Y'all seen that one? I had somebody give it to me anyway. Passion. Yeah, I mean, there's all, and I'm sure there's probably like 40 more slides we could do. There's some of them I've seen that have been quite interesting. BBC did one. a Jesus movie, and man, it's all in black and white, but it's just Jesus is quite harsh and rough at times. But it's always interesting to see how somebody interprets him and how it comes across and how it affects everybody. I remember the Passion coming out and everybody's, lining up in the movie theaters. Go ahead and flip to the next one. Jesus stuff. This is one of my favorites. I used to have a collection of just stuff I would come across. Jesus t-shirts. I grew up in that time frame when that was kind of a big thing, and we had some of those. I really enjoyed the Jesus lamp. I'm being a little sarcastic there, but he's the light of the world kind of thing, right? The Jesus tattoo, I've seen several of those. That's a unique one. I don't know if you know anything about comic books. I'm fixing to geek out for a second on you, sorry. But comic books are really interesting. This in particular one is a Superman one. Jerry Schuster and I can't remember what the other guy's name is, but they're creators of Superman. They're both of them were Jewish guys. And Superman was modeled after Moses, if you don't know that. So that was kind of interesting to see some of that going on there. Flip to the next one. Jesus action figures, bobbleheads, playing cards. I think that's interesting. I always wonder when I see this stuff, what would Jesus be thinking? How would he, what is that, would he ever thought that was going to happen? I mean, sure he did, but I don't know. Band-Aids. Let me read you something that I got. This is a Newsweek article from 2001. So it's probably over 20 years ago. And I want you to think about this. Newsweek cover story, Jesus rocks. Christian entertainment, music makes a joyful noise. The magazine starts off with Christian music, books, movies, videos lumped together are a $3 billion industry, including $747 million just for Christian music alone. Now, this is back 2001, and here we are, 2004? 24, sorry. I'm focusing on this. My dyslexia. Okay. They also state that largely the evangelical industry has created its own parallel world, a place where popular art, culture are filtered through a conservative lens of Christianity, infused with the message of faith. What is the impact on our culture by Christians, given that we now have all the success? Does the world know anything more about Jesus? We're quite a ways past that now. And I think we can kind of look back and I'm not trying to knock your Christian music or anything like that. I have some that I like listening to. I listen to a lot of worship songs, a good diet of different stuff. But what did we create? What does the world know about Jesus based on that? I don't know. I just like asking these kind of questions. And a lot of times, I don't know if you've noticed here recently, there's a lot of people who have kind of disemboweled their faith. They've kind of walked it back, and they've, for whatever reason, and they've been Christian authors, worship leaders. I have a semi-friend that I've gotten to know years ago, and he did the same thing. He came out on Facebook and just talked about how he I'm no longer a believer. I'm not a Christian anymore. And I was just kind of shocked. Didn't expect to hear that. I find that real fascinating. And I don't mean in a good way. I mean in a, wow, how does that happen? How can we prevent that? What is it that was misleading that disconnected them from that? Go to the next one. Like I said, I'm into art. I've had the opportunity to travel a lot. I've been to the Louvre in France. These are some interesting pictures of Jesus that I always find fascinating. I like this wood carving up there. That's kind of wild. I don't know how big that actually is, but or even the silhouette of Jesus, or the one in the nails. That's kind of wild. Go to the next one. The one between the three crosses, the two thieves. Okay, go to the next one. I'm a big Salvador Dali fan. If you don't know who that is, you can go look him up later or something like that. The one in the middle, matter of fact, is this the Bible? Yeah, I have that one here. It's one of my favorite images. It's called Corpus Hypercubus, and it's the one in the middle. What Jesus is on, it's a folded out hypercube. I don't know if you know what that is. You can go look that up later too. A hypercube is it's a constantly moving image, but this one is unfolded, and he has put Christ on it, and it's quite interesting. I think the statement he's trying to make here is that his crucifixion transcends time, and it affects everything, every dimension. I find that really fascinating. And anyway, I'm just drawn to that type of imagery sometimes, and it pulls me in, but that's one of my favorites. Go to the next one, because we got to talk about this. Okay. We got black Jesus. We have Asian Jesus. And probably closer to what he really looked like. I don't know how often I see these stuff all the time, and I'm always fascinated by it. Years ago, I had Aaron, I think it was with you. Aaron used to be in one of my youth groups years ago. We had a group, and we were doing I think it was a lock-in, because we were doing a game. And it was one of those games where you put somebody's name on your back, or you put it on the back, and you try to guess, right? And we were doing the circle, right? And I had one of the little girls from, I used to do Campus Crusade. I did that for about 10 years, and I think it's now called Crew. But anyway, I would get some of the Campus Crusade people to help out in youth. And at this particular group, I think we had quite a few. I don't know, about, 25, we'll say? Yeah, that sounds good. And anyway, we were all in the circle, and she had Santa Claus on her back. And she was an African-American girl. And me and her used to joke around all the time, like brother and sister kind of thing. And she had Santa Claus on her back. And so she's asking, you could ask like 3 or 4 questions, and everybody gave you hints. Well, she can't get it. And one of her questions was, what color is he? And somebody said white. Well, once she figured out it was Santa Claus, she goes, wait a minute, my Santa Claus isn't white, he's black. And we all just died laughing. But what color is your Jesus? Do we ever think about that at all? Switch to the next one. He's a Jewish guy. And I knew that growing up, but when I begin to think about that, I begin to think, wow, maybe there was a reason there was no photography during that time, or portraits weren't painted of him, These are 3 older images now. This middle one I think is an AI image. And this one at the end, or on this side, the far right, that is from, it's either Discovery Channel or one of those channels. They had found the bones of an actual Jewish man during Jesus' time frame. And they did the CSI thing and did his face and everything, and kind of came up with an image. And they're not saying it's Jesus, but they're saying this is maybe what he would look like. Is this the kind of thing when you close your eyes, you see? Would it be surprising to see him, whatever day when he shows up? Would you be, oh, well, I didn't think you looked like that. How would that work? How awkward would that be? I don't know. And this is one of the left, on the far left, he doesn't even have a beard. It's not what we imagine. I don't know. Hold on, I gotta see what's next. Okay, go to the next one. Oh, go ahead, switch to the next one. This is an artist's rendition of the Trinity. This is one of those things I get asked about a lot. One time at Campus Crusade, since we would have a lot of international students, I came in one day. It was probably one of our first or second times, and the majority of the people that we had that day were international students, and most of them were from Asian places. And the thing they wanted to talk about was, what's the Trinity? And I'm thinking, y'all, I can barely speak English. Y'all can't either. How are we going to communicate this? You know, I just don't even know what. And I'm not going to give you, I'm not a modalist or anything like that. I don't do the egg and all that kind of stuff. I tend to think, switch to that next one. I won't go through all this, but that's the typical thing that everybody shows up for the Trinity. You get the Father, the Spirit, and the Son. The Son is not the Father is not the Son, so forth, so on, but they're all God. And it's like, wait, how does that work? That's so confusing. And I hear a lot of times people want to understand this. My personal thought is, if you could understand this, would he really be God? You know, if you could wrap your mind around that, would he be who he was? Kind of a little bit humbling. Go to, hold on a second. Hold on, don't go to that one yet. But my take on this is God is, and I wish I could have said I phrased all this, but I've heard this from another guy, but God is species unique. There is no other being like him, nor will there ever be another being like him. And that resonated with me, and the opportunity that I've had several times here recently to have a discussion about the Trinity, like of all the stuff they want to talk about, they want to talk about the Trinity. That's kind of the way I've left it with people. God's too big sometimes for us to, and if we could wrap our arms around it, our mind around it and figure it out, would he really be God? So I can live with questions that don't have answers to them. But I can't live with answers that I can't question. Does that make sense? I've had that discussion with people too. Flip to the next one. Okay, this may be a little offensive, and I'm not trying to be, but there is an entire group of people who are entrenched in alien abduction. I don't know if y'all have ever seen the TV show Ancient Aliens. Anybody ever watched that? I'll be honest, I've watched that several times. Thank you. 3 of us, 4 of us. Come on, I know there's more. Come on. Oh, there you go. Take a minute and watch all that. Now, I'm not, by any means, when you sift through all of it and you check those guys out, sometimes they're way off. What's that guy's name? Eric von Däniken. He wrote Chariot of the Gods, and I read that a long time ago, or parts of it. But he's like really reaching for some stuff. But at the same time, flip to that next one. They're really trying to push Jesus as an alien. Now, I'm just going to go off on a limb and say this. I don't have any issue with aliens. If they showed up in the galaxy, part of creation, great. That's awesome if God did that. I don't see them. I mean, they're just, if they have to eat, sleep, go to the bathroom, whole 9 yards. That they're part of the physical world. They're not transcendent like we kind of hear. Without getting off into a whole nother issue here, but there are a whole bunch of people who have had experiences, and I ran into some, mostly in Austin. And do I need to say more? Mostly in Austin. I had this great conversation with a guy that I worked with one time, and he was just this clean-cut, nice guy. We'd have these great conversations about the Bible. And one day he started talking about his abduction experience, and I was like, what? It just like blew me away. And I wanted to laugh, but the other side of me was like, I've gotten to know this guy. And he's telling me all this stuff. And you know what? There was no place, and this is back before internet, okay, if that tells you anything. I think we had email, maybe. But there was no place to go to find a book to read. I mean, I couldn't find anything on this. Nobody commented on this or nothing. And it took me several years before I found somebody who had really good, solid answers on this to actually, and of course we weren't in communications at that time, but I had questions, because there's some legitimate people who have seen some things and went through some things, and those kind of people are predisposed to big picture thinking. You're talking about going out to reach people. If you can find somebody like that, they'll have a discussion with you about purpose in life. Why am I here? They're primed for that kind of discussion. But that's a part. That's something I think the church needs to wake up to at times. Switch to the next one. Oh, Jesus is a police officer. He's got his nightstick. I mean, who doesn't think of this at some point? You get out of line. You didn't do what was right. I run into this quite a bit. I have a tendency. My dad told me one time that you will reach people that I will not be able to reach. And my dad said, like I said, I grew up in church. He was a suit and tie, every Sunday guy. He's a little more relaxed now. But and one of my main objections about being a preacher was I didn't want to wear a suit and tie. I could barely wear the clothes my mom laid out for us on Sunday morning. But this whole idea of performance-based believing that you have to clean yourself up or you have to do all these things right to come to the cross, man, and that to some degree that seeps into some of us sometimes too, you know. But I've run into people, like I was saying, who for one reason or another they don't go to church or it wasn't relevant in their life. They think they've messed up too much. And I remember having a discussion with a young lady, and we were talking about churches and different ones, and her excuse, or her reason, we'll put it that way, for not coming was, I've got to get some things in my life together first. And I'm thinking, no, you don't. That's the problem. You come to him without your stuff together. He's the one that puts it all together. But so many times, that's the way people see Jesus. With the nightstick, get back in line, Flip to the next one. Oh, this is a Tower of Babel idea. I don't know what you were taught as a kid. Like I said, my Bible stories of the Old Testament sometimes were quite kid-friendly. Can I say that? And I'm sure there's a reason for that, right? But as I got older, I was able to read things for myself and then go do the research and study. You find out there's more to stuff. These guys weren't trying to get to heaven, okay? They were trying to bring God down. They were trying to localize him. And if you read through that, God's not about that kind of stuff. Flip to that next one. Hope Norman Rockwell will. I know that's not what the original looks like, but so often, how many times do we try to make God in our own image? How many times is God okay with some of the stuff we do? Because we want, we try to paint this picture, and no pun intended there, but this picture of God in our lives, that he's okay with this. And I'm not trying to be, the other image, the policeman Jesus, but at the same time, you don't have to go back to it. No, that's fine. I'm not trying to be that guy, but at the same time, we try to put ourselves in there, and it's the other way around. Go to the next one. This is another example of that real quick. Santa Claus Jesus, right? I hear this a lot of times from like I say, I have a tendency to draw some weird people sometimes and make present company excluded, but some of them are in the opposite side. They fall into the atheist realm or at best agnostics, and they see Jesus as Santa Claus for adults. And I always kind of like sitting and talking with them and understanding where they're coming from. And when you dig a little bit with them, you find out they've had some sort of experience somewhere. It's usually a personal one. God didn't answer what prayer, whatever it was. In fact, back when we were doing prayer advance, and I remember this quite. Me and Sam, I was driving him to school. I use him as an example every once in a while. We were going to school, and we were talking about prayer. And I drive from White Oak to Hallsville with him, so we've got a good 20 minutes sometimes, depending on traffic, maybe 30. So we're in the car together, and we'll talk about everything. And we were talking about school, or we were talking about stuff, and I was asking him about prayer. And what do you thought about prayer? Because, we've had these discussions back and forth. And he goes, well, he goes, Dad, I've been praying, and I just don't think God's answering my prayers. I was like, well, sometimes God says no. Sometimes he says wait. And then I thought, well, what is he praying about? So, well, what are you praying about? And he goes, well, I've been wanting God to stop school from happening, and he's just not answering my prayer. I said, wait, it doesn't work that way sometimes. So we had to kind of walk through that a little bit more. But he's a kid. He's trying to figure it out. Anyway, Santa Claus Jesus. Go to the next one. Let's just go into Christmas time, right? This is one of my, who doesn't like Christmas, right? I always, you get the warm, fuzzy version of it, that we kind of go through. We get the manger and the baby Jesus and the wise, and the shepherds and so forth. And sometimes we kind of think back at it for a little bit. When I was younger, I began to think about it a little bit more and do some research and find out that, the shepherds were at the low end of the totem pole as far as people went. And here the Savior, the creator of the universe, is born. He becomes human. He comes through the birth canal. That means somebody had to change him, change his diapers. Somebody had to feed him, taught him how to walk. He went through the whole process of being a human. And it makes me just rethink about Christmas sometimes and what that means to us. I don't know. I'll always, and of course there was such a uproar in the spiritual half of that. It was kind of like, if you will, D-Day for the spiritual side. When he shows up, they know it's the end for them. You want to talk about a sign of the end times? That's it, his birth. That's the beginning of the end for all that. And of course, you do get some other occasions where Jesus shows up in the Old Testament. So your Trinity is it's not a New Testament thing. It goes all the way back to the Old Testament. But it's not the same as the birth. Go to the next one. Okay, I did grow up in church, and I grew up Baptist most of my life. Now, Jesus turning water into wine is what was going on here. The Baptists like to have him turning the wine into water, if you know anything about Baptist. And I was taught drinking was just, it's all sin, it's all evil. And I grew up that way. Now, once I began to find out, and I understand and completely respect people who have struggled with that, and they can't be around that, awesome. I'm with you on that. But that's not what Jesus was doing here. He turned water into wine. And it's his first miracle. And I always used to think, why was it that? Why didn't he heal somebody or, raise somebody from the dead or something like that? Why is he turning water? And I want to get into this a little bit more in a second, but when you understand what's going on there, he saved the reputation of that couple. Because that was a big thing. And he's interested in your reputation. He's interested in something so, I would think would be so small and minute. And he's interested in that. And that's his first miracle right out the gate, right? Not what you would think. Go to the next one real quick.
His mom came to him and said, fix it.
Yeah. So I'll get into my mom in just a minute too. The stuff she would say to me. Anyway, this is what I find this always interesting. This is when Jesus gets righteously mad, right? He makes a whip and goes through and cleans out the temple. And it had nothing to do with them necessarily buying and selling, but they were actually cheating people out of stuff. So it's not about money. It's about honesty. And once he cleans it out, what's the first thing? My house will be called a house of prayer. And I kind of like the fact that, of course now we don't have a temple like that. We're the temple, right? So what does that look like when he comes into our lives and cleans it out? You know, is your life a house of prayer? I find myself, and I know people who are driving by look at me, they either think I'm singing or something, but I'm driving in the car just talking to God sometimes. And sometimes we have little screaming matches, but he knows, you know, is your house a house of prayer? I see my son walking around. Switch over to the next screen. This one may be kind of weird for you, but can you imagine what that was like when it doesn't say it a whole lot in Luke, but it implies that this girl's a prostitute. She comes in and starts washing Jesus' feet, and everybody's like, what? He should know who this is. Does it not blow your mind that he makes friends with sinners? And I think the world doesn't get that. Like I said, we went back to, Jesus with the nightstick. They're trying to clean themselves up before they come here. Jesus says several times, it's not the sick, it's not the well that need a doctor, it's the sick. And he's welcoming these guys in all the time. And I just have, and I'm going to reveal my heart a little bit here. I just have a burden for those people who have, they've either gotten burnt out from church or they've gotten hooked up on maybe some bad theology somewhere, and it's just, wrecked who they were, who they thought they were in God, and they've walked away. Or maybe they just don't even come to church anymore or they don't even believe. Those are the kind of people I just feel so drawn to them and want to interact in their lives and just get to know them, Because a lot of times they're open. Go to the next one. Jesus wept. Shortest verse in the Bible, right? For the past several years, I'm going to say at least about 6 or 7, God has taken me to John 11 constantly. And if you know what John 11 is, it's the verse where Jesus goes and raises Lazarus. And just throughout that, I'm constantly coming back to that whole passage and just finding different stuff in there. And it just I don't know if you read I hope you read your Bible, but if you're reading it and things like that just shine out to you. But this hit me one day, and I knew the passage. And on top of all that, I've read the whole thing, so I know what's going to happen at the end. And Jesus, he knows what he's there to do, right? He runs into Martha and Mary, and they're like, where were you? How many times have you asked that in your life? Where were you, God? Where are you at? What's going on? Why haven't you fixed this? And of course, if you know the beginning of that story, he waits a few days before he shows up out there. And he's got reason for it. But he gets there, and they come, and they're all upset, and he cries with them. Man, that hit me good. He cries with us, no matter what you're going through. Even though if he knows the end of it, and it's going to be great in the end, he's with you when it hurts. Go to the next one. This kind of, I've always seen this one on the left, and I don't remember if we had that in our house or it was in a Sunday school room, because sometimes the church and our house were about the same because we were there all the time. But I remember seeing that one, and I just remember that being when they talk about lost sheep and Jesus going after the one, leaving the 99. Man, I just think of these images like this, and what he does for us when we go astray. You're probably right. I probably had a couple of those. Okay. I'm going to skip a chunk of his life that we talk about all the time, the cross and the resurrection. Not because it's not relevant. I just want to move to something a little bit different. Go to that next one. It's the ascension. When he's already died, he's come back, he's met with all his disciples, he's talking to them, and he's like, hey, look, this is what, go forth and make disciples. He never tells us to convert people, right? That's what cults do. We're to make disciples. But he goes and go forth and make disciples. And one of the things, I've had several youth groups in my life and just been involved with several ones, and I always look to see who's going to follow. And I keep in touch with some of them, right, Aaron? And I'm picking on Aaron because he's sitting right there. Carrie's right there. I've known her for a long time. But I've seen different people throughout the years, and there's some of them I can pick up the phone right now that I've known for years and call them. And it's nothing, I don't think it has anything to do with me. It has everything to do with God in their lives. And they had good parents a lot of times, don't get me wrong, but they wanted to follow. And I'm like, great. Because I think, 4 years you have them in youth maybe? I'm thinking, no, let's look on down the line. What happens after those 4 years? And there's some of them that have drifted off, and I don't hear from them. There's a few of them that I'm not sure what they're doing, but I see them every once in a while, and, I think they're okay, but I try to keep up with some of them. So this is the interesting, I don't know if you've ever seen them try to do this in movies. It's always weird. Some of them, it's like the camera angle is going up, and I don't know what, look at them. They look like they tossed him up or something. I don't know. It's just a weird, I don't know what that would actually look. Go to that next one. This is another perspective of it. It's like a Superman thing. I don't know. It's just kind of interesting to see how people interpret. This next one's a little bit different. I kind of like that one. I don't know what that means that he ascended. Go to the next one. So this is like out of Acts when they're talking about it. When like, hey, what are you standing around here for? He told you to go do some stuff. Go do it. But to me, that always fascinates me. He leaves right after he's done all this stuff, and he just takes off. And he says, hey, go. Just kind of what you guys were up here talking about was, hey, go make disciples. Go do what you're supposed to do. And one of the things, flip to this next picture. This is my son. And if you haven't met him, good. No, I'm just kidding. He's really a good kid at times. I don't have him full time. I'm checking to make sure he's not looking in the window. But, because he was been gone this past week, and I didn't know if I was going to have him for Father's Day because they were coming in, they went to Disney World. And me and him have a really good relationship, and at least for now. And I'm sure when he becomes a teenager, it'll be a whole nother thing. But thank you. But he was texting me and showing me pictures and stuff like that. And let me focus on this for just 1 second. When I got this picture, his mom sent it to me, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is my kid. I have no doubt. Flip to this next one. I'll embarrass myself. This was me. Same age, same grade. And I was like, I went and got that picture and showed them, and I was like, good night. This is scary. Flip to the next one so we don't have to look at that the whole time. There we go. But here's the deal. My son has my last name. In fact, if you go back far enough as far as I could go, we all have the same initials. My great-great-grandfather was Samuel Doc Lindsay. His son was a Samuel Doc Lindsay, which was my grandfather. My dad is Samuel Dick Lindsay. I'm Sean Douglas Lindsay. He's Samuel Damian Lindsay. Point is, he carries our name. He represents us just like I represent them. And my grandfather passed away when he was 90-something. So, but point is, there's a couple of times I've gotten a call from the school and say, hey, your son did such a, it's like, oh, great. He's just that kid sometimes. But my point is, he represents us. Just like we represent God here on the planet. I'll be at the front of this line. There are times I have dragged God's name through the mud. And man, I feel horrible for that at times. But the point is, what are you doing with it? What are we doing with it? How do we represent him to other people? Not in a cheesy way, but in a real way. And I think that goes back to who your Jesus is. How do you see Jesus? How close are you in that connection? I'm not saying we will know everything about him, but definitely God reveals a lot to us about who he is, and enough to make us understand it and into a relationship with him, at least. But that's what I'm going to leave you guys with today. Who do you say that I am? And who are you to other people? Who are you representing? And I don't know what that looks like for you. I think that's my last. Is that the last slide? Yep. Okay, good. Because I was like, I don't think I have any more. But who do you say he is? Let's pray real quick. And God, Father, we just thank you for just allowing us to assemble. Help us as we go out to represent you. It may not be perfect, but you've given us that ability to influence others and to befriend sinners and have relationships. And Lord, I just ask that you just magnify yourself in us. And as we leave here today, help us to get to know each other more, Lord. I know sitting out there, I was trying to figure out names for pictures. And I'm terrible with names anyway, but Father, just help us to know people, Lord. We ask this in your name.